This video is part of Perfect Competition. In it, I will explain perfect competition in long-run equilibrium. Recall that profit maximization requires two decisions. One is the output decision and the other is the shutdown decision. Just like in the short run, in the long run, firms make their output decision in order to maximize profit. That is, if the firm's going to stay open, it will choose the quantity that maximizes profit or the quantity at which marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Remember that in perfect competition, marginal revenue is price. Therefore, if the firm is going to stay open, it will produce the quantity at which price equals marginal cost. At this quantity, firms then determine whether to stay open or shut down. In the short run, firms decide to stay open if total revenue at least covers the variable cost. In the long run, all costs are variable. That's because in the long run, all inputs are variable. So in the long run, firms will choose to stay open if total revenue at least covers total cost. That is, firms will stay open if profit is greater than or equal to zero, and firms will shut down if profit is negative. Graphically, this means the relevant shutdown point is the minimum point on the long-run average total cost curve. I'll show you this later. But for now, we can write this as the firm will shut down if price, that is the price set by the market, is less than the minimum point of average total cost. Remember, in the short run, firms shut down if price is less than the minimum of average variable cost. Another difference between the long and the short run is that economic profit in the long run is zero. This is because in perfect competition, there are no barriers to entry or exit. Therefore, if existing firms are making a positive economic profit, other firms will see that and enter the market. If firms are making an economic loss, some firms will exit the market. As I will show you next, this entry or exit of firms leads to long-run economic profit equaling zero. Let me explain why not having barriers to entry or exit leads to a long-run economic profit of zero. I will also now explain why the relevant shutdown point is the minimum of average total cost. To explain this, let's consider what has to be true in a perfectly competitive market for the market to be in long-run equilibrium. The first condition for long-run equilibrium is that market supply must equal market demand. The reason for this is because for equilibrium, price has to be stable. When supply equals demand, there's no shortage or surplus pushing price up or down. Therefore, for equilibrium, the entire market supply must equal the entire market demand at the equilibrium price of P star. The second condition for long-run equilibrium is that each individual firm must be producing the quantity at which marginal revenue equals marginal cost. We need this for long-run equilibrium to ensure that each firm's output choice is stable. In other words, if each firm is producing the profit maximizing quantity, the quantity at which marginal revenue equals marginal cost, then no firm has any incentive to change its output, making output stable. In a perfectly competitive market, here's how this looks. For the individual firm, for the representative firm, demand is again horizontal at the equilibrium market price. Demand is always average revenue, and in perfect competition also equals marginal revenue. Each perfectly competitive firm is going to choose to produce the quantity at which marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Right now, what we see is a market that's stable in the short run. In the short run, we need supply to equal demand, again, so price doesn't have any upward or downward pressure. And in the short run, we need marginal cost to equal marginal revenue, so no firm has an incentive to change its output. For long run equilibrium, we additionally need profits to be equal to zero. To explain this, let's consider the case where a firm is initially making a positive economic profit. To show this profit on the graph, I'm going to add an average total cost curve to the individual firm's graph. What I'm showing here is that at the firm's profit maximizing quantity, average revenue is more than average total cost, giving the firm a positive economic profit. Because each firm is making a positive economic profit, other firms are going to see this and want to enter this market, which they can do because in perfect competition, there are no barriers to entry or exit. As the number of firms increases, the supply curve is going to shift to the right. Remember from principles of economics that one of the determinants of supply, one of the shifters of supply, is the number of firms. Again, positive economic profit is going to induce entry of new firms, which in turn will increase market supply, shifting it to the right. As you can see on the graph, as supply increases, shifts to the right, equilibrium price is going to fall. As equilibrium price falls, so too does the individual firm's horizontal demand curve, which is horizontal at the market price. As long as there's positive profit, there will continue to be entry. And as long as there's entry, supply will increase, pushing down price. This will continue to cycle until price is pushed down far enough to cause profit to go to zero. On my graph here, what you can see is that at the new profit maximizing quantity, the quantity where marginal cost now intersects the new marginal revenue curve, the firm is now generating the same amount of average revenue as it is paying in average total cost. So here the firm's economic profit is zero, which means no more entry will continue. Because no more entry will continue, supply will no longer shift, meaning price will no longer change, and the market is stable. To recap, for long-run equilibrium, we need supply to equal demand, marginal revenue to equal marginal cost, and we need profit to equal zero. Notice on the graph that at the long-run equilibrium, each firm is producing a quantity at the minimum of its average total cost curve. Let me explain this a little bit more. Returning back here to conditions 2 and 3 for long-run equilibrium, let me write them out in the following way. Again, condition 2 says for stability in the firm's quantity, we need marginal cost to equal marginal revenue. Condition 3 says in order for there to be no entry or exit, we need for profits to be zero. When profits are zero, total revenue equals total cost, which means average revenue equals average total cost. Again, here is condition 2, and here is condition 3 expressed as average revenue equals average total cost. In perfect competition, marginal revenue and average revenue are the same because they're both equal to the market price. Therefore, we can set the marginal revenue equal to the average revenue, again, which is true in perfect competition. What this means is that combining conditions 2 and 3 gives us the equality that marginal cost will equal average total cost for long-run equilibrium. Marginal cost equaling average total cost captures both profit maximization and zero profit. Looking at the graph, we see that average total cost is a U shape, meaning it has a minimum. Whenever the average total cost has a minimum, the marginal cost must equal it at that point. Before I conclude, let me point out one more thing, and that is the market equilibrium quantity. Initially, when the market was in short-run equilibrium, the equilibrium market quantity was right here. We can call that capital Q star. In long-run equilibrium, the market equilibrium quantity is therefore bigger. How can this be when we have each firm producing smaller quantity and yet in total the market is selling a larger quantity? The reason is because even though each firm is producing a smaller quantity, there are more firms due to the entry. So having more, even though smaller firms, leads to a higher overall market quantity.